So in James Gunn's upcoming 3-year plan, would he consider making another Suicide Squad movie or a Suicide Squad project? Since 2016, we've had 2 Suicide Squad projects. We've even, in a way, had a spin-off in Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. I know, completely different group and completely different set of characters, but very nearly same vibe as a Suicide Squad. We have a Suicide Squad game coming out, and even in the comic books, the Suicide Squad has become much more popular. We've even had a Suicide Squad animated movie with the Assault on Arkham. Suicide Squad has always been somewhat a well-known team in DC, but I would say the past 6, 7, maybe even 8 years, that is when they've become extremely popular. Now, as many of you know, I made a video a couple of weeks ago talking about my predictions, and yes, some of them being bold predictions, on what movies he could be working on. Because I believe there's going to be 5 movie announcements from him, or at least 5 movies that will drop in this 3-year plan. In these predictions, not one of them did I have being a Suicide Squad film. There is a piece of me that thinks he's not going to make a Suicide Squad film, but then there's another piece of me that thinks he might do it. I'm not completely sold on it, and I have my reasons, which is exactly why I'm making this video. So very quickly, let's look at the box office numbers that both Suicide Squad films has made, and let's look at the first Suicide Squad from 2016. So the movie's budget was $175 million. Domestically, it made $325 million. Internationally, $421 million, which would make up the total sum worldwide, $746 million. That movie was just not good. It does not have good reviews, and whether or not you want to take face value of what critics tell you, because usually I don't, but they didn't give it good reviews, the film as a whole did not succeed. I mean, if you're not over 700 million worldwide in this type of genre, there's a problem. 600 million, I think, is a 50-50. You could get away with it. Anything below that is just not good for superhero comic book films nowadays. And there's probably a big reason why this film capped out at 700 million. Its opening alone was 133 million. This movie made a lot of money when it first dropped, but as the movie went along, its numbers dwindled, and that happens with every movie nowadays. But usually the movies that people want to see have second or third week increases where it actually earns extra money. And in this film's case, it wasn't really doing that. And it's because word traveled around that this movie was just not paced well. Its story wasn't that good. The villain sucked. Jared Leto's Joker is barely in it. And when he is in it, he's just really not that entertaining. All of that caused this movie to fall short of 800 million. Budget and income wise, yes, this is a success. You're basically earning back $600 million. That's a huge chunk, big amount. But overall, the movie was just not received well during and after the fact, regardless of money. Now, let's look at the Suicide Squad from James Gunn. The statistics on this movie are really bad, and we do have to look at some reasons on why that is the case. But the film's budget was $185 million. Domestically, it earned $55 million. Internationally, $112 million, which brings its sum to $168 million worldwide. It did not make its money back. The movie failed, and you can say what you want. It's better than the first Suicide Squad. It's a solid film. James Gunn knows how to make superhero movies, because I agree it is certainly a lot better than the first Suicide Squad film. I think it's a lot more fun, but it just failed. It's as simple as that. Why did it fail? Well, one of the biggest reasons being it was released during COVID. Around the world, not many places were open for movie theaters. You only had specific sections. Even in countries that started opening up, there were areas that were still closed down and you couldn't see this movie. Some people didn't want to go to the theater even if their areas were open, but I would argue, regardless of the COVID situation, this is just not good. I would even say, for example, if Spider-Man No Way Home came out during that time, I would argue that movie still would have made $1 billion even during that time, because people would have been willing to go out and see the movie during a time where the whole world wasn't fully open. Also, why would you call this movie the same title as the first Suicide Squad film? Oh, you added a "the" in front of it. Okay, big deal. If you really wanted to grab people's attention, you probably should have called the film something like Task Force X. Calling it Suicide Squad was not helping your cause at all. Even though it's a little different from the first film, even if you just called it Suicide Squad 2, at least people would have been like, oh, it's a sequel. Not saying people would have wanted to see a sequel for that film in the first place, but it's still different. I have many points and reasons on why this movie failed, but the last one I'll say is really summing it all up. Why was Warner Brothers wasting nearly $200 million to make another Suicide Squad film in a time where we just don't need Suicide Squad? This is not the type of content or movie we need for DC to exist and thrive. After looking at that information for both the Suicide Squad films, even if you go out and dissect those movies from beginning to end and for simply what they are, yes, James Gunn's Suicide Squad is fine. It's a good time. The first one really isn't that good, and even though I believe David Ayer has his own version, I really don't know how much better it is. Regardless of all of these points, I don't think it is time for Suicide Squad anymore. I would actually even argue the Suicide Squad's time is over. I think they had their time in the sun. I think they've been able to explore versions of these teams in DC through comics, now games, and movies. I think we are done with that group, or a vast majority is done with that group. A big reason why Suicide Squad was even made in the first place is because when you looked over at Marvel, you had this very niche yet unique group in the Guardians of the Galaxy. And the Guardians of the Galaxy, even if you felt was like weird, like why are you doing this in Marvel? Why is this needed? It ended up working. It ended up being different and strange yet fun all at the same time. And James Gunn did a good job with it on his first film. The second movie is questionable, but the first one is certainly really well done. DC saw that and they said, well, why don't we bring out our own unique niche type of group like Guardians of the Galaxy in the Suicide Squad? And whereas they share similarities, I would actually argue a group closer to the Suicide Squad in tone is more like a Green Lantern Corps, more space travel-esque. With Suicide Squad, they definitely share tones similar to Guardians with personality, but anyways, they tried the Suicide Squad, the trailers made it look amazing, and then when the movie came out, we all saw what happened, and then we all saw what happened when they tried again a couple years later. Both of them failed. On a daily basis, I don't see anybody begging for Suicide Squad content. I'm constantly seeing Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lanterns, and the Justice League. I'm not seeing anyone begging, I need a Suicide Squad 3 or 2, however you want to number them, or just in general, another Suicide Squad movie. When I said about Warner Brothers wasting a lot of money on content that wasn't needed at the time, I certainly think that exists now. Suicide Squad is not something DC needs to survive and thrive right now. Personally, I think the only way we should get another Suicide Squad movie, I think the only way we can have Suicide Squad incorporated in anything in the future is if it is a joint effort, if it is a Justice League versus Suicide Squad. I think that's the only way we can get something with them. Since James Gunn is working on a lot of TV shows for HBO Max right now, if he wanted to make a Suicide Suicide Squad series, I'll let that slide. I think that's fine because you as a viewer, you can choose if you want to watch these series or not. They're not as important as the movies, I guess. If I was somewhat in charge of this company or was capable of delegating and making decisions, that's the only way I would bring the Suicide Squad back, is through a TV series. I mean, I made a video about the Warner Brothers controversy going on right now with Suicide Squad, and I gotta say, no one's really talking about that game, and that game comes out this year in like the next 4 to 5 months. We then again have barely any information on what the game is actually gonna look, play, and feel like, but regardless, Suicide Squad is not being talked about. If Warner Brothers just let Rocksteady do what they wanted to do, we could potentially be getting a well thought out Superman game from the company who mastered Batman. But instead, we're getting a Suicide Squad game. A game that, once again, I was not seeing anyone begging for. This was not something anyone really wanted. Maybe a select community of people love this, and I'm going to play it. I am looking forward to it overall. The Suicide Squad is not a must right now. Once again, when you're looking at both Suicide Squad films, the first one is literally used as a meme nowadays. I don't ever see anybody talking about that film in a manner of, oh, this part was cool, or this design was neat, or I actually liked how they did blah, blah, blah. The only thing I see from the first Suicide Squad films are just memes, pictures and videos making fun of specific things. That movie is generally taken as a joke. When I look at the second Suicide Squad film, even though I think it is much better than the first one, and even though I think there are some fun and cool things to take away from the film, you barely ever see anybody talking about that movie other than Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is the only character that people cared about from that film. You never see anyone talking about Idris Elba's Bloodsport. Yes, of course, you have John Cena's Peacemaker, but the only reason why he's discussed is because of his own series. I think by far the best part of the movie is the fight between Peacemaker and Rick Flag, and do you ever see anyone talking about it? No, not at all, because no one cares. Like, I mean, there's a reason why Batman vs. Superman is discussed more than the Suicide Squad films, because either way, you love Batman vs. Superman or you hate Batman vs. Superman, there's more to talk about there than there is the Suicide Squad, because in a way, people care about Batman vs. Superman. People care in either a, I love this film, I must defend this film, which is someone like me, or you hate this film because of what Zack Snyder chose to do with your beloved characters. That movie is still discussed. The reason why Suicide Squad isn't is because you take it at face value and you move forward. Ask anybody what's the one thing you take away from the Suicide Squad film, and even the Suicide Squad film from 2016. And the number one thing will be is Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. That is the only thing people care about. She's the only character that people truly care about seeing in the future from those movies. People probably would have rather watched those movies if it was called Harley Quinn and not Suicide Squad. You might see a bump up in income. I truly believe the time for the Suicide Squad is over, and at least right now. You can maybe revisit it in the next couple years, and I'm talking 5 to 10 years, but right now, their own solo projects, it's not needed. And I'm sorry if I keep saying that in this video, but it's true. The reason why I could see James Gunn reconsidering and making a yet again another Suicide Squad film is because he has experience in that so far, and also he is very, very good at creating D and C list characters. So maybe while we get our Batman and our Superman and our Justice League and whatever else, you'll be able to cleanse your palate with a team-up movie of characters who aren't nearly as important as the Justice League, but their story still adds to a wider world. I could see him considering doing something like that. But then the reason why I don't see him making a Suicide Squad film for this next 3-year plan is because he's a smart enough guy to know that Suicide Squad just does not work right now. We just don't need that for DC to succeed moving forward into the future. I don't think James Gunn himself looks at his Suicide Squad film and says 185 million is what it took to make this film and 168 million is what we got back, and says to himself, this was a success. I don't think he thinks that. I think he knows that Suicide Squad might need to take a step back. Like I said, incorporate them in a Justice League film. Maybe use them on a smaller scale in a TV series. But yet again, their own movie, I think, would be quite a big mistake. But now, everyone, it is your turn to let me know in the comments below what you think of my thoughts here and what you would do. Would you make another Suicide Squad film? Would you do a Suicide Squad TV series? Or would you just not touch that group at all? Maybe sprinkle in something about them from time to time, or just spam that idea and use them later on in the future. But that's all I got for you on this one, everyone. So until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.